Have you ever watched one small act of kindness unfold, an act so simple it nearly slipped by unnoticed, yet so powerful it changed more than one person's life? Today, we're bringing you exactly that kind of story. It begins with a plane ride, a compassionate gesture, and an unforeseen bond formed at 30,000 feet. Welcome to Motivation for Success, the channel that uncovers hidden moments of empathy, resilience, and inspiration. If you're new here or simply haven't yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story that might spark a life-changing idea for you. The airport was alive with that familiar orchestra of clacking luggage wheels, scattered announcements echoing over the PA system, and travelers rushing by in a blur. Amid the hustle and bustle of the airport stood Keanu Reeves, dressed in a sleek black suit. A light breeze of cool, processed air flowed from the vents above, carrying the faint scent of roasted coffee from a nearby cafe. Ticket in hand, Keanu took in his surroundings: families juggling stroller handles and snack bags, businesspeople in pressed suits tapping irritably on phones, and backpackers hauling entire journeys on their shoulders. Despite being one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces, Keanu wore an easy modesty that made him blend into the crowd, just one more passenger waiting to board. As he stepped onto the jet bridge, the cool metallic smell of the corridor reminded him of countless flights he'd taken in his career. Still, something about this trip felt different, as though the atmosphere itself buzzed with possibilities. Moments later, he settled into a cushioned first-class seat. Though used to traveling in comfort, he never took it for granted: the warm overhead lighting, the quietly attentive flight attendant, and the gentle hush of the premium cabin all reminded him how fortunate he was compared to so many others. Then came a shift in the cabin's energy, a ripple of excitement passing among the first-class passengers. Clint Eastwood, a legendary actor whose career spanned decades of cinematic triumphs, appeared at the cabin entrance. The lines on his face bore the stories of countless roles, all etched by time and the weight of life experience. Yet his eyes held a subdued glow, a mixture of pride and subtle fatigue. A flight attendant was explaining, in hushed, apologetic tones, that the airline had overbooked first class. No seat remained for Clint Eastwood. If no one volunteered to give up their seat, he would have to move to economy. The inconvenience startled him, but he responded with a calm stoicism, resigned to fate. Keanu, watching from a few rows away, felt a gentle pull of empathy. He knew Clint Eastwood's films well: epic adventures, tender dramas, thrilling heists, each carried by that gravelly voice and commanding presence. The thought of this cinematic icon being shuttled to a cramped seat in the back gnawed at Keanu. A sudden decision took shape in his heart. Rising from his seat, he approached Clint Eastwood and spoke in a clear, unassuming tone: "Sir, you're welcome to take my seat. I'd be honored." Clint Eastwood blinked in surprise. A hush descended as other passengers took in the sight: two respected actors, generations apart, intersecting in a spontaneous moment of generosity. "That's incredibly kind, but I couldn't ask you to do that," Clinton said, voice tinged with an unexpected softness. Keanu shook his head. "I want to," he replied simply. "Your work has meant a lot to me, and I'd like you to be comfortable." Glancing around, Clinton noticed how intently everyone watched, yet none seemed willing to intervene. After a pause, he nodded slowly, gratitude visible in his weathered features. With that, Keanu gathered his backpack, gave a polite nod to the flight attendant, and headed down the aisle to the economy cabin. Instantly, the atmosphere changed: narrower seats jammed close together, overhead bins stuffed to bursting, a louder din from crying toddlers and rustling snack bags. The air carried a mix of scents: cleaning fluid from the lavatories, faint perfumes, and the plastic tang of packaged meals. Yet Keanu merely exhaled, determined to embrace whatever crowded seat he could find. Squeezing into the middle seat near the back, he offered a reassuring smile to a nervous teenage boy by the window and a friendly nod to an older lady in the aisle seat. They, like many around him, exchanged bemused glances, recognizing the famous actor now seated among them. Meanwhile, in first class, Clint Eastwood settled into Keanu's spacious chair. He leaned back, running a hand through his silver hair, feeling the odd blend of relief and awe. A quiet sense of wonder filled him. How often did this happen in real life, outside of film scripts? The flight attendant discreetly asked if he needed anything, to which he only murmured, "I'm fine, thank you," eyes still glancing down the aisle as though wanting to keep track of Keanu Reeves. Taking out a small notepad from his jacket, Clinton jotted down a few words, something about the surprising magnitude of a single kind gesture. Not long into the flight, the airplane was cruising smoothly at altitude. The lights dimmed in the cabin, offering a respite from the terminal chaos. Keanu tried to catch some rest, but the flurry of economy's everyday life made it nearly impossible. An infant crying 2 rows back, overhead bins rattling with each mild bump, the squeaky chatter of a passenger complaining about missed connections. Still, he maintained that air of gentle calm he was known for. He slipped in his earbuds, hoping to find a moment's escape in the soft drone of music. Suddenly, the seatbelt sign pinged on, and the pilot's voice crackled overhead. "Folks, we're entering a rough patch of weather. Please remain seated and buckle up." A tremor shivered through the plane, sending a ripple of concern through the passengers. In first class, Clinton gripped the armrests, peering through the window as lightning flickered across the darkening sky. His heart pounded. A man who had faced countless staged dangers for the camera now confronted the unpredictability of a real airborne storm. The turbulence intensified, tossing the plane in uneven jolts that made drinks spill and overhead bins threaten to pop open. Economy class felt each dip and bump more acutely, and Keanu quickly removed his earbuds, bracing his hands against the tray table. Around him, eyes widened in alarm. Hushed prayers echoed, and children whimpered. He turned to the teenage boy by the window, who was gripping the seat in terror, and softly said, "Hey, it's going to be okay. The pilots are trained for this kind of thing." Though no one could promise anything with absolute certainty, his voice carried a steady reassurance. Eventually, the turbulence began to ease, leaving the airplane cabin filled with shaky sighs of relief. Some passengers craned their necks, checking to see if seatbelt signs had turned off. Keanu sank back into his seat, letting the tension in his shoulders slowly unwind. Meanwhile, in first class, Clint Eastwood unbuckled, still somewhat rattled, and stood carefully. Despite a flight attendant advising everyone to remain seated, he felt compelled to check on Keanu. Navigating the narrow aisle through economy's cramped rows, Clinton found Keanu near the rear of the plane. Other passengers stared in disbelief. Here was a legendary actor, one moment in first class, the next weaving among them, now pausing by another superstar who traded a cushiony seat for economy. Clinton quietly slipped into the aisle seat next to Keanu, replacing the older lady who had gone to the lavatory. Without preamble, he asked, "Everything all right back here?" Keanu forced a small grin. "Yeah, just got a taste of real roller coaster air." "You?" Clinton exhaled, letting the hum of the engines and the faint smell of stale coffee fill the space between them. "I've done stunt scenes with pyrotechnics and near-miss car chases, but this turbulence felt more real than anything I've filmed," he admitted. Keanu nodded, empathy flashing in his eyes. "Reality has a way of rattling us, doesn't it?" For a moment, the two men sat in thoughtful silence, the aisle crowded with watchful eyes around them. The tension of the storm gave way to a quieter, more intimate connection, a spontaneous friendship sparked by seat numbers and swirling clouds overhead. Clinton swallowed, his voice lowering as he glanced at the row behind them. "I never really said thank you. I know you didn't do it for attention, but giving up your seat. That was more than polite. It made me feel," he paused, searching for the right word. "Appreciated," he settled on, meeting Keanu's gaze. Keanu offered a humble nod. "I've seen your work my whole life. I've watched you fight battles, solve mysteries, break hearts, and repair them, all on screen. The least I could do was offer you a comfortable trip. Clinton found his chest tightening with emotion at the sincerity in Keanu's eyes. Ironic, isn't it? He murmured. We spend so long playing heroes in movies, but sometimes a simple gesture reminds you what real heroism looks like. Keanu cast his gaze down, introspective. I'm no hero. I just do what I hope anyone would do. Life's taught me that you can't put off kindness, it needs no permission. The older lady returned from the aisle, and Clinton, noticing the flight attendant watched them curiously, excused himself. Take care, he said, voice gentle. Keanu nodded, you too. And thanks for checking on me. Their brief conversation was enough to turn heads in the cramped cabin and spark curiosity, but to them, it felt like an oasis of calm amidst a storm-tossed flight. After the flight crew announced the plane's upcoming descent, a palpable mixture of relief and travel fatigue permeated the rows. Passengers gathered belongings, turned off electronics, and craned to see the city skyline glimmer beneath the clouds. Keanu closed his eyes, grounding himself in the breathy drone of the engine. He didn't regret giving up his seat for a second. He imagined that Clint Eastwood was likely reflecting on the moment too, perhaps scribbling notes in a well-worn journal. When the plane touched down with a soft thud, applause rippled through the cabin, part custom, part collective expression of gratitude for arriving safely through the earlier turbulence. Keanu joined the slow shuffle toward the exit, exchanging polite farewells with the teenage boy who thanked him for his comforting words, and the older lady who patted his arm in silent appreciation. Far ahead, in the more spacious aisle of first class, Clint Eastwood waited. He recognized the hush that spread near the aircraft door, a sign that onlookers had noticed them both. Cameras flashed. Some travelers hastily fumbled for their phones, eager to record or snap pictures of the two men leaving the plane together. As Keanu stepped off the aircraft, the artificial brightness of the jet bridge gave way to a swirl of reporters who had caught wind of something unusual on this flight. Clint Eastwood discreetly placed a hand on Keanu's shoulder, steering him away from the most persistent cameras. We'll say something later, Clinton insisted to the small crowd, his gravelly voice firm but not unfriendly. The reporters' questions blended into a muddle. Did you really give up your seat? What was the turbulence like? Can you comment on traveling together? Both men, weathered by decades of media attention, offered only brief acknowledgments before pushing forward to claim their luggage. At baggage claim, the two actors stood side by side, an unlikely pair in that noisy swirl of travelers. People gawked from a distance, snapping surreptitious photos. With a faint smile, Clinton turned to Keanu. I'd like your number or email. I have a feeling we could take this moment and do something more, he said, the glint in his eyes suggesting new ideas swirling within his seasoned mind. Keanu nodded. Sure. I'd love to see what you come up with. They exchanged contacts, Clint Eastwood's card boasting an elegant gold emblem, while Keanu's was plain and unassuming, just like him. Then they parted with a handshake, each heading toward different drivers waiting outside. Over the following days, a story spread across social media. Keanu Reeves gives up first-class seat for film legend Clint Eastwood. Pictures and short video clips taken by fellow passengers popped up on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, capturing the exact moment of the seat handoff. Thousands of comments poured in, praising the humility and generosity displayed. Some interpreted it as a mere celebrity news blip, but others were deeply moved, calling it a sign that simple kindness could still thrive in a star-studded world. As the buzz around that flight settled, Clint Eastwood reached out to Keanu with a more concrete proposal, an idea for a short film or documentary about small acts of compassion sparking change in unexpected ways. He wanted to highlight how a single moment, like giving up a seat, might ripple outward into countless lives. Keanu, intrigued, visited Clinton's quiet home studio. There, amidst posters from decades-old hits and a film library spanning multiple genres, they brainstormed. Dialogues blossomed about the emotional core of kindness, the intangible ties between strangers, and the way empathy can bloom in the most ordinary places, like an airplane aisle during a bout of turbulence. As they developed the story, Clinton and Keanu shared personal anecdotes about times they had been on the receiving end of kindness. Clinton recalled a moment early in his career when a casting director took a risk on him despite zero name recognition, shaping a chance that would define his life. Keanu spoke of quiet gestures he'd seen in public, someone offering food to a person in need, or a commuter helping a pregnant passenger find a seat. In the hush of that studio, they realized they weren't just telling a story about themselves, they wanted to tell a story for everyone who had ever hungered for a spark of hope in a sometimes unkind world. They decided the project should culminate in a moral takeaway, that no act of kindness, however small, is ever wasted. They wished to portray tension in the scenes, moments of fear or selfishness, and then a gentle release as empathy prevailed. By weaving these elements together, they hoped viewers would feel not just entertained, but called to reflect on their own. When they finally filmed the short piece, they chose an intimate set replicating parts of the airplane cabin. Real flight attendants were invited to share stories of generosity they'd witnessed in real life, like passengers swapping seats so a parent could sit next to a child, or rushing to aid a fellow traveler who fainted mid-flight. Clint Eastwood directed with a keen eye, capturing raw expressions and unfiltered dialogue. Keanu engaged from behind the scenes, ensuring each line of script carried authenticity. Midway through production, one scene required an intense dialogue where a character, feeling overlooked, wonders if anyone in the world would ever do something selfless for them. In a raw voice, the actor demanded, "Why would anyone care about my comfort?" The moment echoed what Clinton must have felt on that plane, suddenly told he had no seat. Remembering Keanu's willingness to surrender comfort, Clinton recognized how one gesture could shatter that despairing question, offering a quiet but resounding answer, "Because someone does care." Word of the short film leaked to the public, generating anticipation among fans of both actors. Media outlets scrambled to interview them, but they kept details under wraps until the finished piece was ready to premiere. Finally, in a modest private screening room, they presented their work to a small audience of friends, press, and a few chosen fans. The lights dimmed, and the first scene showed an airplane full of weary travelers, tension stirring as seats were mistakenly swapped. A wave of empathy traversed the screen as the storyline showed how one passenger's simple act reshaped the outlook of another. By the time the credits rolled, subdued sniffles scattered across the darkened room. The final on-screen message read, "Kindness thrives in the smallest moments." Applause followed, not the raucous cheers of a blockbuster premiere, but the heartfelt gratitude of viewers who realized they'd witnessed something tender and true. Clint Eastwood turned to Keanu, a serene smile on his lips, and mouthed a thank you. Both men understood they had shared more than a seat on a plane, they had cultivated a vision for empathy that reached beyond themselves. When the lights came up, the audience reflected in hushed voices. Reporters approached eagerly, capturing quotes about the film's meaning. One journalist asked, "Why does a brief seat exchange matter in the grand scheme of things?" Keanu answered simply, "Because it shows how we can choose compassion when no one forces us to. And that choice, even for a small moment, can ripple outward." Clint Eastwood added, "Nothing about that act was planned or choreographed. It was real, spontaneous generosity that reminded me how powerful we all are if we dare to care for each other. Here's where it all comes back to you. Maybe you'll never find yourself giving up a first-class seat for someone else, but consider the essence behind that gesture. Every day, opportunities arise to be kinder than necessary, whether it's offering a chair to an elderly neighbor, paying for someone's coffee behind you in line, or lending a listening ear to a friend who feels alone. These choices might seem small, yet they can spark hope in ways you'll never fully see. So ask yourself, what's one simple act of kindness you can do today? It doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to be genuine. Share your thoughts below and tell us about a moment you either gave help or received it in a way that changed your perspective. Let's create a ripple effect of empathy. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to Motivation for Success and join our growing community of dreamers and doers. We believe in the power of stories to move us closer to the best version of ourselves. Perhaps the next time you board a plane, or step onto a bus, stand in line at the grocery store, or simply notice someone who needs a bit of comfort, you'll remember this story and choose compassion. After all, a single seat given away might be the start of someone else's renewed faith in humanity. Isn't that worth the smallest sacrifice? In the end, that's our lesson today: compassion, in its humblest form, can shine brighter than the biggest spotlight. Let that remind us, no matter who we are, each of us has the power to transform a routine moment into a gesture that lingers in another person's heart. So keep kindness close, keep hope alive, and thank you for spending your time with us on this journey. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay inspired, stay compassionate, and most importantly, stay human.